our moderator, Gotcha, Alexandria. And I just wanted to quickly, I'm not going to introduce the colleagues because Gotcha will do so, but just welcome Saha Sabiasachi that will be speaking, Fernanda Barreto, Chanhua, Elena Zottowa, Duncan Chando. So and also Gotcha himself, just to say a warm welcome. I will just give a small recap of what we've done up to now for those of you that have not been able to attend all sessions, especially like our distinguished guest, Fernanda Barreto, who is a South-South coordinator in Brazil, because she was brought in a little bit at a later stage because one of our colleagues could not attend. So just a little brief summary of what we have done up to now. This BRIC CIS dialogue series is part of the South-South cooperation series of the ILO. It's part of our investment on having regions cooperating among each other. And this BRIC CIS series actually followed two series that we had, one on BRICS and one on CIS. And the one on BRICS Knowledge Series was very much following the ministerial meeting that happened in India. That was Indian presidency on BRICS labor ministries meeting, and that had some sets of recommendations. And the CIS meeting on formalization also was the request from the region, especially ILO Moscow, on having more views on formalization. So we had two background papers that were analyzed by Santosh Mehrotra and Colin Williams. These papers are available on the spaces that I think Duncan will add in the chat, and I can also add in the chat a bit later on. You all have them. And we had also some experts like the director of the partnerships department, Philippe Marcadin, and also experts from CIS countries. So we have some sessions very devoted to CIS, some sessions very devoted to BRICS. The last session was mostly Chinese and Brazilian perspectives, and then we had our colleague who is here, Yutong Liu, explain a little bit about the China-funded project on Skills ASEAN and how that links up to formalization of the informal economy, the Brazil-Africa Institute, and social protection and informality with ISA, with a very interesting element, which is the existence of the BRICS liaison office, a virtual liaison office. So now this was created before COVID-19 pandemic times. So just having a BRICS liaison office is something extremely interesting. So that is something that I think I wanted to bring also up to the attention of those who have not been in all the sessions with us. And now I also wanted to introduce my colleague who will be your moderator today. So it's Gotcha Alexandria. He's a citizen of Georgia. He is a Capricorn like me because he's born in January. And he is a senior specialist in work activity at the ILO Decent Work team and the country office for Eastern Europe and Central Asia. So he has several duties with Vice President of Georgian Trade Union Confederation in the past, and very active member of the National Tripartite Social Dialogue Commission. So I think all this experience on social dialogue also brings the important, let's say, dimension that we have in this workshop that is so critical on the whole question of social dialogue. Also, I mean, the whole South-South cooperation, as we saw, it's not only between governments, but also institutions from the South, but also, and first and foremost, how can I say that? First and foremost, the important characteristic of having the tripartism, social dialogue, and having this kind of dialogues really with the social partners. So I think Gotcha Alexandria would be a very good moderator today. And over to you, Gotcha, for this moderation.
Thank you so much, Anita. Although there was no need to tell the colleagues about my date of birth, but it's good to remind me that almost in 1 month I will turn 49, so that's a good reminder for me to remember about my birthday. Thank you again. Yeah, and welcome to the colleagues. I see that we, as usual, we have very diverse participation in this panel. So we see trade union representatives, the employers organizations representatives joined already. We see academia, the government, and of course the ILO colleagues. This is very promising start, and we also have a very good lineup of speakers. As we already know, and Anita already mentioned, so today we are discussing the situation within BRICS and what is happening among the participants within the constituents on the issue of formalization, and we expect the partners to provide their perspectives. Without further ado, I would like to introduce the representative of the All China Trade Union Federation, Mr. Chuanhua Wu, who is the director of the Cooperation and Development Division at the All China Federation of Trade Unions. He has a very extensive experience in international trade union movement, almost 20 years, and he has been a delegate of many international labor conferences, and he is a specialist at cross-culture communication. Mr. Wu, floor is yours, please.
Thank you, Co-Chair. Good morning, good afternoon, good day, every participant. I would like to share with you what I have learned from the training course. I have, but before that, I would like to thank the PADEF, ILO headquarters, and ILO office in New Delhi, ILO office in Moscow, and the International Training Center of Turin, especially for Senehal, for Anita. Thank you for your hard work and which facilitate our participation. Personally and in the name of the Chinese, the participant of the Chinese trade unions, I would like to express our sincere thanks to all of you. Now, now I began to share with you what I have learned from the webinar series of the SSPC knowledge sharing on an integrated approach towards formalization project. This project is very helpful, and I have learned a lot. Now I would like to share with you what I have learned from the webinar series. I have a very simple PowerPoint. I will share my screen with you. Hi.
Are you managing to share?
Yeah, I try to share my.
Anita, I think we also have this presentation of Mr. Chuanhua. Can we?
I have just sent it through email.
Yeah, we got it. Yes. Yeah.
Let me try. If you don't manage, let me try to find it. Just 1 second.
Okay, sure. Okay, I continue my presentation.
Just continue. While that, I will open your presentation and share it. Just
okay. Firstly, from the training course, I've raised my awareness of the formality and the informality. Formality is a better multiple win choice. Formality brings for workers higher income and better social security. For the enterprises, technological progress and stable industrial relations, which led to higher competitiveness and sustainable development. And for the government, means higher tax income and lower administrative expenses. Surely, it is also good for other aspects like innovation and technological progress and fair competition. Why there are so many informal employment? Reasons for emerging and existence of informality. According to Professor Antonio Santos, the informality is a complex phenomenon and emerge or exist with various economic and social reasons. Some workers are forced to choose informal jobs because they urgently need the money to feed their families, and they cannot find some formal jobs. Some workers care the current life quality and more. They do not think they need the social security or other welfare. Some workers consider that the money in their own hands is better than in the government or social security fund. Some employers try to
just
escape.
1 second. Gotcha, can you forward me his presentation? I cannot find it.
Yes, yeah, in a minute.
Okay, thank you. So please continue. Sorry about that.
I think it's okay because the PowerPoint is very simple.
Okay.
Some employers try to escape from the social security contribution and tax, or prefer the flexible employment relations or easier labor relations. Some countries may face governance failure and be short of resources to enforce formality. Some governments may hope to encourage the employment through informality. This oh, sorry. So so we find that the formality have its benefits and informality has its reasons. It's a very complex phenomenon. What's the impact of the informality on workers? According to the statistics, currently in the world, majority of workers are working in the informal economy or taking an informal job in the formal sectors. These workers have their reasons for survival, for current life quality, or do not have the condition or awareness to join social security system or choose to invest on their own, or other reasons, but they lost their benefits in all aspects like social security, occupational health and safety, and the chance to upgrade their skills to increase employability or enjoy better public service or other rights and interests. Thus, informality is understandable, but not the best choice. Formality is better for all stakeholders. We should encourage the transition from the informality to formality. This my awareness through the training course. I have learned, opened my mind and have a clear awareness on the formality and the informality. What the trade unions should do? I think firstly, we should organize the workers, especially those vulnerable groups in the informality sectors or those workers, informal workers in the formal sectors. In the Declaration of Philadelphia, poverty anywhere constitutes a danger to a prosperity everywhere. So we can understand that helping those workers in the informality sectors, of informality employed, is also a work to serve all the trade union members. We as a trade unionist have a lot to do to promote the formalization of the informality. But we firstly should try to organize all the workers in the informal sector and informal workers in the formal sector so that we can represent them to find solutions to formalize them step by step. Organizing the workers in the informal sector or formal workers in the informal or the informal workers in the formal sector is a precondition. After organizing them, we can proceed the collective bargaining or consultation or lobbying the government for policies in favor of them so that we can defend their right and interest and to help them formally employed. Secondly, I think we should take a pragmatic and sound working ways. The informality is related to the economic level, the per capita GDP, the development pattern of the country, as well as the culture and the governance and other factors. I think the PPT the PowerPoints don't match what I'm saying now, but it's okay. The informality cannot be an overnight change. It's a process. Since the informality is a very complex problem, it's not easy to solve it in a short time. We should be patient and promote change towards formality step by step. The formality is a bright future, but the way to it is long and full of twists and turns. It is important to balance between the idea of formality and the reality of informality. Otherwise, we will be frustrated. We should firmly believe that the formality is reachable and every positive step is promoting the formality. The cooperation, experience exchange, and peer learning are also very important to enhance the formality. Thirdly, we trade unions should exert positive pressure on the formalization policies. The training course is aimed at the constituents of ILO members and mainly the government, because governments have more resources and power to formalize the informality. Trade unions, as a social partner and a workers' organization, can play an important positive pressure to policies contributive to the formalization. The important policy field is closely related to formalization. We should exert positive pressure to adopt or implement policies and measures. For example, firstly, facilitate the transition of workers and economic units from informal to the formal economy. Second, promote the creation, preserve, and sustainability of enterprises and decent jobs in the formal economy. Third, prevent informalization of formal economic jobs. These 3 points is a guideline of ILO recommendation 2004. Fourth is what I learned, and the following is what I learned from the training course. Fourth, boost GDP development. Fast GDP development is always related to higher formality rate. And also we should promote inclusive development, GDP development, which is also very good for higher formality rates. As for the economic patterns, we think that the manufacturing sector is helpful to increase the formality rate at the same economic levels. For fifth, provide more education and training opportunities. Sixth, enlarge social protection coverage. Seventh, ensure decent working conditions. 8, facilitate social dialogue. 9, create sustainable enterprises. 10, strengthen poverty reduction measures. 11, advance rule of law. 12, launch anti-corruption campaigns. 13th, enhance international cooperation for development. All these policy aspects, we as trade union, from our trade union's perspective, we should exert our positive pressure to adopt and the implementation of these policies. The third aspect, from this training course, I know that we should actively participate in the ILO training course, because ILO training course have always invited a lot of experts who have done deep and comparative research in the related fields and provide a lot of practical policy guidance. We are inspired by them and always can learn a lot. Secondly, we also think that SSTC, South-South cooperation and triangular cooperation approach is very important, because South-South and triangular cooperation agenda, this agenda, SSTC agenda is of ILO, is guided by the principles of respect for national sovereignty and ownership, equality, solidarity, non-conditionality, and mutual benefits. It is a strategic, efficient, and win-win modalities of cooperation to encourage peer-to-peer learning and use of local expertise. Drawing on the expertise of all constituents, SSTC is a strategic vehicle for promoting mutual beneficial learning and cooperation to promote formalization of decent work agenda in general, and also the transition of informality to the formality. Also, I think this training course provides us a networking opportunity. The training series are good opportunities for us to make friends with other experts and officials of the constituents. From the e-campus of International Training Center of ILO, we can find the mail list of all participants. We can contact these people when we has the potential opportunity for cooperation. It is a very good source for us. We also welcome the visit to China for exchange views and to explore cooperation opportunities to better serve the workers. By the way, I would like to share with you the Chinese trade unions experience in 2 points. One is that Chinese trade unions now are trying to their best to organize more workers from the new employment forms into trade unions, and already made big progress. After organizing them, the workers' rights and interest in the field of salaries, occupational safety and health, social security, and trading opportunities have been well safeguarded. In July this year, ACFTU, together with the Supreme Court of China and other governmental ministries and institutions, have issued guidelines for safeguarding the right and interest of the workers of the new employment forms. I think all these measures are trade unions' efforts to formalize the informal workers. If somebody interested in these measures, we can continue to exchange after the training course. Thank you. That's all. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chuanhua. Your presentation was just shared by Anita to all the colleagues, so the colleagues can access it and keep it as your presentation. Thank you that you emphasized some of the very important issues related to informal economy and the formalization of informal work, and definitely you emphasize that that for many workers the informal employment is not a choice but rather the absence of it, and that the transition to formality contributes to reaching the SDG goals, and that it has a international implications. And thank you for sharing your trade union's perspective on how the formalization should be pursued, and for emphasizing that the ILO recommendation 204 is an important tool in this area. And also definitely the international cooperation, networking, establishing contacts and cooperation is very important as well. And happy to hear that the trainings you undergone have helped you to succeed in these areas. Colleagues, I would like to now pass the floor to our colleague, Fernanda Barreto. Fernanda has been since 2009 the coordinator of the ILO Brazil South-South Cooperation Program at the ILO office in Brazil. She has extensive experience in developing international cooperation programs. And at the moment, she's coordinating the global project titled Cotton with Decent Work, which is implemented in Paraguay, Peru, Mali, and Mozambique. And Fernanda holds a degree in international relations and law with an MBA in sustainable development. Dear Fernanda, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Gacha. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you. Thank you, Anita, for the invitation. And well, I'd like to share my experience within the coordination of this global project, which is called Decent Work in the Cotton Value Chain, and see a specific experience within this project between Brazil and Peru regarding labor inspection and how it promoted the formalization of the economy in Peru. Just a second, I'm going to share my screen. Do you see?
Yes, yes, we do.
Yes.
Please go ahead.
Okay. Well, the first thing I'd like to make a link is between the recommendations that were already mentioned by Anita and this experience. Specifically, I'd like to refer to the recommendation 2, 3, and 6 of these BRICS and CIS dialogues and within the recommendation 2, there is a specific topic that talks about how we should develop training programs together with the ILO constituents from BRICS and CIS countries on the transition from the informal to the formal economic, bearing in mind ILO standards and social dialogue, labor inspection per se, social security, and other areas. There is also one recommendation that says the BRICS countries can strengthen cooperation in regard to labor inspectorates and share experiences of inclusive social dialogue. And last but not least, we would like to continue supporting a dialogue between tripartite partners in BRICS and CIS countries. So I think that this experience that I'm about to share with you try to respond already to these recommendations that we have already approved in the last dialogues that Anita has mentioned. So why cottons and why how the project started? It started within an initiative of Cotton 4 that was held within the World Trade Organization. Brazil entered with in a fight with the US within the World Trade Organization and won the case, doing a link between the economic trade and the social development. And because of that, in 2010 and 2014, 2 memorandums of understanding between Brazil and the US were signed regarding this cotton dispute. And part of the funds that Brazil received from the US were directed to South-South cooperation, and some of the projects that Brazil did with UN agencies were signed and implemented afterwards. In 2015, we had what we called the Plus Cotton Mais Algodão with FAO, and our project between Brazil, ILO, and IBA were signed in 2016. It's a partnership between ABC, IBA, which is the Brazilian Institute for Cotton, and also ILO. And in 2018, there was another partnership with the WFP, the World Food Program, and all these agencies, they are part of a broader South-South cooperation program that are implemented by the Brazilian government within the area of cotton. The objective of the Decent Work project in the value chain of cotton is to promote decent work within the whole value chain, but through South-South cooperation. So we are going to systematize, share, and adapt Brazilian good practices or relevant practice in promoting decent work with developing countries in the area of child labor and forced labor, formalization of work, promotion of youth employment, combating discrimination, promoting gender, race, and race ethnicity equality, and also social dialogue. Which are the countries that are working with? We are working in Africa with Mali, Mozambique, and Tanzania, and in Latin America and with Paraguay and Peru. How did we promote decent work within the value chain? We had 7 steps. The project started with the selection of countries through the demand. It was one of the principles of South-South cooperation, that the countries that were going to be part of the initiative will demand this to Brazil. After that, we mapped the value chain and studied the decent work gaps in each country. So we have 5 studies of the gaps of decent work in the 5 countries that we are working with. And once we have mapped all the gaps that we found in the value chain, we would look for Brazilian experiences that would be suitable to the gaps that we found and could answer the gaps that we found. And in the step 4, we made some prospective missions with ILO and the Brazilian institutions to the countries selected in order to together with them design an intervention of South-South cooperation, design the projects, the sub-projects, and after that start the implementation of these sub-projects. At this point, we are in step 6, implementing the sub-projects of this global initiative and starting monitoring and evaluation and systematizing the good practices that we have found in this context. I would like now to emphasize the principal gaps that the research on decent work found. What were the deficits? First of all, we mapped the value chain in each country and all the steps that we're working with. Then in the first area of the cotton chain, we could, I would stress that we found low income for producers, deficits on occupation safety and health, inappropriate use of pesticides, and in the lower part of, in the higher part of the value chain, weak professional curriculum, weak opportunities for young professionals, deficits in vocational training. I'm sorry. And in the whole value chain, we could see the existence of child labor, workplace accidents, lack of labor legislation, deficits of labor inspection, or deficits in having very high profile labor inspection, weak social dialogue, lack of social security, and very high instances of informality in the whole value chain, besides discrimination at work. Having these gaps in mind, what were the solutions that were found to fulfill these gaps? We had to look into the Brazilian experiences and try to select some of them that were already in place and very well implemented, and to share with the countries that were part of the initiative. So for that, we had some partners in Brazil. We had the Ministry of Citizenship, the SENAI, which is the National Service of Apprenticeship, Industrial Apprenticeship, the ABRAPA. ABRAPA is the Brazilian Association for Cotton Producers, the Ministry of Brazil, the Ministry of Labor in Brazil, and very specifically the Labor Inspection Secretariat, which is a very well-known secretariat in Brazil and with a high experience in labor inspection. In this sense, we are working in actions against child labor in the beginning of the value chain with lots of trainings and awareness raising, promotion of the associations and cooperatives, strengthening of social dialogues, promotion of safety and health at work. And in the higher part of the chain, we have, together with SENAI, worked in the sharing of experience of SENAI on prospective studies methodologies in the textile and clothing sectors, apprenticeship programs, promotion of vocational training, and certification of professional competence. You know, something that benefits the whole value chain is the strengthening of labor inspection to ensure labor rights, formulation and monitoring of national programs to combat child labor, and some studies on comparative analysis of legislation. So the whole strategy of the project is that when we had the decent work gaps, we selected some experiences of Brazil that could be shared with these countries. And specifically, I would like to mention the labor inspection here. That was a case that dealt specifically with informalization. What is this case? Within the sub-project between Peru and Brazil, the whole team, I mean, the Brazilian institutions and also the Peruvian ones and the ILO selected this experience of collective notification in Brazil to be shared with Peru. And in Peru, they have adapted and called it dissuasive letters, aiming at formalization with the involvement of tripartite constituents. What is this collective notification? It's a labor inspection methodology to maximize the scope of inspection. Usually we have a very few numbers of labor inspections. They cannot reach a great number of enterprises or even reach the agriculture, for example, the agriculture sector. They have difficulties in traveling around the country. So the low number of labor inspections, they had to provide and they idealize a methodology that could reach a great number of enterprises with low labor inspectors, with a small number of labor inspectors. So they decided to establish this mechanism, which is a preventive and informative, which has a preventive and informative character and involves social actors in the sector, such as workers and employers. When they did it when they shared it with Peru, Peru adapted this idea into something that they call dissuasive letters, which is a proposal to part of an overall strategy called pre-intelligent analysis and case building, and consists of carrying out a diagnosis and research of the labor situation in a given sector before intervening with a fiscal action. I would like to mention some steps of this Brazilian collective notification. First, they select the economic sector. Then they do a preliminary diagnosis. After that, they invite trade unions, professional bodies, among other key actors in the sectors, to discuss what they have found in the sector, what are the gaps that labor standards that they could find in the sector. And after discussing with the social actor, they submit a notification to the enterprises of the sector, saying what are the rules that they have to follow. And after that, there is a 5-step here where they actually implement the fiscal actions. So there is a whole strategy before implementing the fiscal actions that are analyzing the sector, inviting the social actors, discussing what would be this letter that could be sent to a very large number of enterprises. And only after sending the letter saying what should be, what they should be attending, they would do fiscal actions, dissemination events, and consultation with stakeholders. And after all this process, they could also have adjustments to the regulations and receive feedback on how the enterprises of this sector are seeing the rules and how we could improve the rules and regulations in a specific area. In the Peruvian dissuasive letters, they do 3 steps. They do also a preliminary intelligence, analyzing, gathering information, and so on. Then they draft an intervention, and which are much more in the focus of technical assistance to the sector, and also sending dissuasive letters to these enterprises saying what they have to follow. And after that, the 3rd step is monitoring and reviewing the results. In the case of Peru, they are very much looking after formalization of the economy, and they are looking for labor workers that are not formalized and how they could reach the enterprises and say that they should formalize it. This is the timeline of the South-South cooperation. In this specific case, in 2017, we had a prospective mission to Brazil where the Brazilian notification case were presented. After that, we made a training, a labor inspection training in Brazil. So I call it the phase of exchanging information. In 2018, Peru was adapting it, and they did the first pilot of dissuasive letters in Peru. And in this case, 3,500 formalized workers were reached. They have this result. So in 2019, they kept applying the methodology in urban and rural areas in Peru and reached 8,000 workers as a result in 2019. We kept this exchanging with Brazil and did another joint inspection in Brazil in 2019. A delegation of Peruvian inspectors went to Brazil to together with the Brazilian inspections execute collective notification in Brazil. So they have approved several protocols saying that this could be applied in Peru and reached 100. I'm sorry, I never know how to mention the numbers, but these are the numbers of workers that were formalized. And in 2020, they are adapting this methodology to instrument to the pandemic. They saw that sending letters were a very good case that could be a way of inspecting the pandemic, and several protocols were approved. And between 2020 and 2021, Peru managed to adapt it to the rural areas. They are trying many ways of reaching the small producers. They are using motorcycles, vehicles to call the to reach the producers, because sometimes we cannot reach them. We don't have their emails, we do not have their addresses, we cannot send letters to small producers. So we try to reach them in some creative ways, and Peru is developing a whole strategy how to reach them. And we are also working on the systematization of this whole experience, because we think this is a very good case of South-Southern triangular cooperation, where since the beginning, we share the good experience and we adapt it in a developing country. And we also had the systematization, and we could do the whole cycle of the South-South cooperation process. Well, these are some pictures. I would say that these are pictures of the exchange per se, the three moments where we were having the experience of Brazil shared with Peru. In this picture here, we are with the translation. Do you see that they have the phones, and they were together with Brazil inspecting an enterprise in Brazil. This is how they are implementing the trainings in Peru, and how they're sharing the information with the local producers with cards, and trying to reach as much producers as they can. And now the results. Here we have Sunafil is the labor inspectors in Peru, and the numbers of workers that they have formalized in the past years, and how it was already on the news, the results of this endeavor in terms of formalization. Well, thank you very much. This is the experience that I would like to share.
Fernanda, thank you so much. This was very interesting and very useful, I think. And I hope that colleagues now from my region, that Moscow region covers, I hope they've been listening to you very attentively, and have put down some notes for their work, because especially in Central Asia, the cotton sector is very much developed. And the problems you identified and you talked about is quite similar in the region. And also it was great to hear that the approach that Peruvian and Brazilian trade unions apply. I mean, what you said about the collective notification or dissuasive letters, it's very much look like at first glance as a quasi due diligence thing. So that can be very useful, really. And maybe I would like to ask Anita if we can, if it is, I mean, consider to translate all these presentations into the BRICS languages, because it will be important really to have access, to provide access to those documents in the languages that are available in our region. Thank you very much again, and because we are, I mean, we are quite in to the schedule, but still, I think we need to be to observe the time that is given to the speakers. And without further delay, I would like to introduce Mr. Sabyasaki Saha, who is an associate professor at the Research and Information System for Developing Countries in New Delhi. Mr. Saha specializes in innovation economics, trade and technology, and development policies, and he has been working on related themes with focus on UN SDGs within BRICS, WTO, and G20. Mr. Saha, floor is yours, please.
Thank you, moderator, for your very kind introduction. It's really a great pleasure to join this platform once again. And as I gather from Anita ji, this has been a truly comprehensive knowledge series, if I may say so, starting with very, very rich concept and background papers, as well as the kind of detailed assessment papers that have been prepared as part of this program. And also, I'm very, very impressed with the kind of recommendations that are evolving from this platform. This has evolved as a truly South-South platform, where mutual learning gains topmost priority and value. Just sitting through this panel itself, I learned about the very specific and very useful intervention that South-South cooperation can bring. So having said this, my role is to contextualize BRICS perspective on the whole debate, as well as to highlight some of the initiatives that my own organization is doing to strengthen the BRICS partnership, as well as the South-South cooperation partnership, and specific areas with regard to the labor market and the formalization challenges. So if you allow, I'll just quickly glance through take you through the slides that I have with me. I'll try to stick to the time that you have given me. Is my screen visible?
Yes.
Oh, thank you so much. Let me tell you a little bit about my own institution, which is an autonomous policy think tank under the Ministry of External Affairs of the Government of India. We are a policy research institution of the Global South, if I may say so. And we are trying to identify the knowledge gaps that are there in the development process and trying to shape the narrative and the capacity building efforts in the South. Our approach over time is more about going beyond the equator. So triangular partnerships are increasingly important as we do horizontal partnerships across the South. International cooperation and the connect for domestic economic growth is something that we have learned from our own experience in India, because our experience in the last 75 years of India's independence, we started off with a planned economy, and then we moved to a more mixed and then a liberalized economy. And what kind of challenges do we face all along in terms of employment, in terms of skill generation? So this gives us a lot of insights as to how transitions take place, how structural transformations in the economy take place. So we are very much, some of our research themes are completely dedicated to some of these priorities. So we are into devising policy options and negotiating strategies for developing countries. Very recently, we have come out with the World Trade and Development Report, which was supposed to be on the eve of the now postponed 12th ministerial conference of the WTO. But nevertheless, we went ahead with the launch of that report, and it is very much there on our website. So this gives a lot of perspectives on the current debates that are surrounding trade and development issues with the advent of new technologies and the context of the development space, the space for catching up for the developing countries. And how to come up with collective strategies in the South, how to build coalitions, and how to, even as we move ahead, Global South is not a monolithic space, and we see, contests in terms of interest. We see regional specificities we need, but definitely the larger parameters and the larger indicators of development that brings a lot of convergence in terms of the gaps that are there and how multilateralism can be effective in that regard. So our research and work agenda covers international economic relations, economic and technical cooperation among developing countries, forging Southern consensus on contemporary development challenges, global economic governance that covers trade, investment, new technologies, and industrialization, promoting collective self-reliance and South-South cooperation. And thereafter, we have our research, thematic research verticals that cover trade, investment, finance, and technology, as I have just mentioned. I would like to, skip this slide where we have talked about the historical perspective on development, how aid flows were not sufficient, how Washington consensus went against the collective understanding of development in the South, and what new thinking is required from the South itself to bring up a credible response to the paradigm that is more mainstream. So India's development experience on South-South cooperation, as I have said, is primarily, driven by its own experience in this last couple of decades of development transformation that India has gone through. We were initially faced with lack of skills, and the entire program about training manpower and the technically and highly scientifically trained, if I may say so, technically skilled manpower, the creation of the Institute of Technologies and their role in national development, and of course the widespread skill base that is so important. How do we see the inequalities coming in there? How do we promote holistic socioeconomic development is something that assumes priority from India's development experience. India's main instruments and platform of South-South cooperation has been, of course, the usual mode of grants and lines of credit, directly supporting southern countries. Also, something that I would like to talk about is Indian technical and economic cooperation programs that are about capacity building and training programs that India offers to southern partners all across the globe. And there are, it runs into hundreds the number of programs that various institutions in India do, and the participants from other parts of the developing world, they travel to India for short, medium, and long-term courses, which are of immense benefit. My own institution runs 5 ITech programs. One of them is specifically focused on learning South-South cooperation, the other on international economic diplomacy. We have a course on sustainable development goals. We have a course on trade and sustainability, and so on. So I would definitely, we have kind of suspended some of these courses because of the ongoing pandemic. But as soon as they resume, if you are interested, you may please look up in our website to find the details about this program, and we can re-engage on this path of learning. India is very much focused on triangular cooperation. It is not something very new. We have been partnering with countries like USA, UK, Russia, France, Germany, Japan to carry out projects in developing countries. India is a strong supporter of multilateralism and multilateral efforts. UN and other multilateral institutions. India has been very much into the UN peacekeeping missions, and it's the largest contributor there, and also supporting UN as an institution. We have developed several Southern platforms. One of them is the network of Southern think tanks. It emerged from several UN tracks on development cooperation. It has emerged into a vibrant network of Southern think tanks. We also partner with civil society organizations and private sector institutions, and we are approaching, it has several knowledge products in the last couple of years. We are trying to approach the issue of development from a unified understanding and framework on debates around South-South cooperation. Much of it was not documented for a very long time. Even the theoretical foundations were missing, but RIS, along with its partners in the Nest, have been trying to fill up this gap in the literature, in the knowledge arena, as well as in practice. We also have something what is known as the Delhi process. It's an annual event where we engage with all South-South cooperation and triangular cooperation partners. We invite international agencies and like-minded partner countries. We started off in 2013. It has emerged into a very prominent platform of the South, we were very much engaged with the Papa Plus 40 process, and the kind of inputs that emerged from this platform were taken note of as the larger design of the Papa Plus 40 agenda came up and its deliverables. RIs have been, as the Indian nodal point for the BRIC Civil Forum, we have hosted 2 BRIC Civil Forums, and that's it's a natural partnership that we have with the BRICS process. We definitely, apart from the academic forum, we are very much into the BRIC Civil Forum, and which we have hosted twice as assigned by the Ministry of External Affairs in the government, and in 2016 and 2021. This year was India's presidency, and in 2021 we had a very successful BRIC Civil Forum where we have tried to expand the process itself and consolidate it further. We covered issues like SDGs and multilateralism, investment, finance, and global public goods, technology, pandemic response, wellness, economic, BRICS economies and women's participation, quality of economic growth, inclusion, and definitely the last one is about future of education and skills. So there was a large CSO participation from the BRICS Civil and space, and it further strengthened the people-to-people ties in BRICS civil society and welfare of the BRICS citizens in the process, and humanity at large was one of the primary focus of this process as we deliberated on specific priorities on SDGs. I'm not going into the history of the BRICS Civil Forum, which again was started by Russia in 2015. So Russia, credit goes to Russia for starting this process, but India has been very robustly contributing, so as other BRICS partner countries. So what are the issues that we see about informality in BRICS? Because BRICS countries, we need to understand what these are very influential and economically powerful countries outside the G7, and what kind of capacities do they have, and how South-South cooperation has been one of the key guiding principles of the engagement in BRICS, and beyond BRICS, what individual BRICS member countries does with their partner countries. So much of it has been discussed, I am sure, as part of this knowledge program, the recommendations that have emerged, but definitely once we remind ourselves of the gravity of the situation and the numbers, it helps us, refocus some of our partnership engagements in BRICS and beyond the way we are discussing it today. Of course, with the pandemic, we see a definite rise in poverty among informal economy workers. And we need to have one foot on mitigating the health crisis on one hand, as well as the economic impact of the crisis on the informal sector workers and those who are vulnerable and marginalized. Now we have fostering recovery with focus on enterprises and workers in the informal economy. That goes without saying. So how do we also curb informalization? So we are in a reverse order or reverse path, if I may say so, in terms of informalization that has aggravated in due course, not only in BRICS countries, but in the developing countries at large. And we need to foster this transition from informal to formal economy. We need to refocus our strategies on some of the priorities. So how do we have enhanced resilience and achieve, focus on inclusive development and decent work is something that BRICS countries are truly concerned about. So we have some numbers with us. The COVID-19 pandemic has led to a loss of equivalent of 255 million full-time jobs in BRICS countries. 1.6 billion of informal economy workers have been affected by. So these are startling numbers, and we see that we are steering towards the long COVID with the emergence of new variants, with new restrictions on travel, with partial lockdowns if it returns in some form. So definitely we are still staring at a difficult time in the short to medium term. So but definitely BRICS has kind of paid attention to this issue of informality, and as through the mechanism of G2G interactions, government-to-government interaction in BRICS, we see that the employment and labor issues have been very robustly focused and at the level of ministers and their engagements. So BRICS has a separate track on labor and employment policies, and in the course of all the presidencies, this track has evolved, matured, and is delivering robustly on BRICS cooperation, labor and employment issues. They have a focus on strong, sustainable and inclusive growth. There is focus on labor mobility, social security, and how to ensure decent work. So the BRICS Employment Working Group is very much part of this mechanism. There is a MOU among the countries, which was signed under the leadership of South Africa back in 2018. And we have the BRICS Network of Labor Research Institutes. So the mandate of the BRICS Employment Working Group is quite diverse and very robust, if I may say, improving labor and employment and social security policies among BRICS countries, learning from each other's experience to enable recovery with stronger national economies, inclusive labor markets, and social protection systems. And specifically this year, if we look at this year's deliberation at the Employment Working Group and the ministerial meeting, the Indian presidency focused on 4 very important pillars of the issue that we are discussing today. First of all, promoting social security agreements among the BRICS countries, formalization of labor markets, participation of women in the labor force that we all are very much concerned about. It is not so much of a problem in the CIS countries, I'm given to understand, but with higher levels of skills and education among the women in those countries. But developing countries by and large have a severe gap in this regard in terms of women, the skills among women and their participation in the economy. I'm just not talking about the other kind of wage gaps and the workplace difficulties that they face, but sheer participation issues are of importance. And finally, the very important subject, if you see a very large economy like ours in India, the proliferation of the gig and platform workers, but how do you address the issues faced by very disjoint set of a group? They are part of the system, but it's not visible, but they are part of the economic activity. Part of it is formalized, part of it is not formalized. Even if formalized, there are a lot of challenges that we are aware of. So given this background, as I have just mentioned, that there is an institutional mechanism in BRICS where the knowledge exchange can happen very robustly. That is the BRICS Network of Labor Research Institutes, and where the discussions around the pathways, be it on employment-centered macroeconomic and sectoral policies, reorientation of skill ecosystem, re-regulation, and the labor regulation systems, technology-enabled labor market information system for new forms of employment, are maybe taken up more robustly. It is already being addressed. And there are also proposals for a detailed study on post-COVID labor market scenario in BRICS. And I'm sure, if BRICS engagement with BRICS countries having considerable knowledge capacities, if they engage on something of at this level, with a topic that is going to be very important in the years to come. And COVID pandemic has only shown or exposed the vulnerabilities in this sector, where informalization has become a rampant phenomenon, and you need to bridge the gaps not only in terms of the social security that you provide to your workers, but also in how do you enhance their skills and how do you enable them to be relevant for the future, as we see with the advent of new technologies. So if BRICS countries can collectively leverage their knowledge capacities from common understanding and initiatives, that would be a global public good in itself, which can help other developing countries in the process. But if we want BRICS to proactively go beyond what they're currently doing in terms of supporting which of course, as I have mentioned, that countries, I have just given the example of India. We heard how Brazil is so proactively engaging in South-South cooperation in the Latin American region and also with Africa. On specific initiatives, we know how other BRICS members have been very keenly there is a neighborhood perspective to it. There is also beyond the neighborhood perspective to it. It covers trade, investment, connectivity, as well as some of the social infrastructure areas. So BRICS countries are individually doing it. There is a certain focus that we need to build on. We need to build up the focus on poverty. We need to build the focus on inequality, and definitely bringing both of them together would be a very specialized analytical as well as a practice-oriented focus on informality as we are doing today. So there is a lot of scope. And what, if I may say, this engagement with other southern countries, we have the G2G partnership that would naturally take place. We have international organizations like ILO that is facilitating some of these processes very effectively. And there are also the need for the wider academic partnerships that can come up. So we need the bottoms-up approach as well. And I am not excluding other stakeholders that are part of the process, be it trade union or civil society groups that can very meaningfully come together. So there is a lot of scope that we need to re-engage on these processes. We need to learn from each other, keep discussing and the way forward on some of this. And the knowledge, enhancing the knowledge capacities, if I may put it correctly, through initiatives like this, that we have a knowledge series which has served, over the months. You connect with the participants and partners, you build the momentum on some of these issues, and you see where we go. So this has been truly, if I may say, a fruitful exercise, and think tank partnerships, knowledge cooperation on some of these issues, and in the spirit of South-South and triangular cooperation is the way forward. So with this, I end my remarks for now.
Thank you very much, Mr. Saha. Thank you for once again reminding us the importance of cooperation in different formats of the participants of BRICS, not only the government level, but also civil society, trade union, research institutes, academia, and other levels. So bilateral, triangular, multilateral, all those are very important. And thank you that you reminded about the Indian presidency focus on 4 key pillars, and which is very important for social partners who are present at our conference today, our webinar today. And I hope that, and I'm sure that the colleagues, participants have gathered a lot of insight and perspectives from your presentation. I would like now to go and give the floor to our next panelist, Ms. Elena Zottowa. She is an economics expert with experience in civil service, international and research organizations. Ms. Zottowa is a senior research fellow at the Institute of Economic Forecasting of the Russian Academy of Science, and she holds a PhD in economics. She is also a permanent member of the Russian delegation to the G20 working groups on employment and the Interstate BRICS Association. Ms. Zottowa, please, floor is yours.
Thank you very much for giving me the floor. I was asked to make a very brief presentation in Russian, so I will try to switch on the slides.
Please, yeah, the interpretation is provided, so
hopefully, yeah, it works. Я начну свою очень короткую презентацию с того, что повторю то, что сейчас говорил предыдущий выступающий, а именно о том,
I will focus on the declaration of Ministers of Labor of Employment signed during Indian presidency in 2021. This declaration is short only 6 chapters, and it covers different chapters. So you have introduction, which is a part of every declaration. And then in content, it covers social security, formalization of economies, participation of women in employment, and new forms of employment. DEG,
На слайде вы видите время.
Russian language gives a different translation. So you have a gig as the employment. So in Russian, it is temporary employment. But when you speak about digitalization of economy and employment through electronic platforms. And the conclusion of the declaration are the determination of the following steps, following actions to be undertaken by next presidency in the next year. Well, what we can say? Yes, of course, formalization of employment markets is covered only by 2 paragraphs. So more paragraphs are dedicated to social coverages, coverage to employment of women, gender employment. But does it mean that countries pay less attention to formalization? Not. This is not. It doesn't mean that. I should say that all the topics discussed by ministers
Высказывались и
of labor and employment during this meeting and covered by different partners and different declarations. All
привносят свой вклад в решение вопросов формализации рынка труда.
have importance when working on solutions of issues of formalization of economies. This is a comprehensive issue. It requires time. So we know about this. Those who will work on the slides later, you will find here translation of paragraphs dedicated to formalization of markets. So first of all, this is point 7. So informality of markets as defined by ministers of labor of BRICS countries is still an important issue. Why it is still an important issue? Because we have been talking about this for a long period of time, and BRICS countries did develop employment track. So we still have this issue. It is there, and the issue is still open, and it will remain important for a long time to come. And ministers have talked about this. They have already said that pandemic situation did increase the risk of informalization of economy, risk for people who wanted to formalize their position but have to, because of pandemic, stay in informal sector. So here on the slide, you see that the share of informal employment in BRICS countries is different, but the problem is very important for every country. And this is the most important issue for ministers of labor and employment. What was said by the ministers? They said that they do confirm obligations during Russian presidency, during Russian presidency, and meeting of ministers. The first one was in 2016. At the same time, ministers think that formalization of economy, it is indicated in the declaration of 2021, helps to improve living conditions of population, also increase efficiency and production in markets, and will give an increase in countries' development and decrease in poverty. So all the points covered in different presentations before me are covered here in this declaration of ministers of the current year. What is also important, not only formalization of economy is important. We have talked about pandemic, which increased the importance of this issue, but also the point this, from 2016, there are changes underway and innovation approaches have been undertaken by countries within their policies for formalization of economy and labor.
Ну, как бы не просто
Well, this is an important issue because ministers do determine this issue, and they also understand that there are some efficient ways of solving these issues, and these issues were covered by other actions. I will talk about this later. Also, in this paragraph of declaration, paragraph number 7, we have this important action. The basic document for ministers and for BRICS countries is recommendation of ILO we have talked on for a long time. And during our preceding discussion, we proposed to work out a convention on the basis of this recommendation. Recommendation 204. This is a popular instrument used by all BRICS countries. Well, regarding new forms of innovation approaches to policy of formalization application. Well, we have already said that countries do implement these policies. The issues of formalization is a complex problem. So different actions are required. So we need to give access to social protection, and also BRICS countries do improve the process of registration. There is facilitation of the process of registration for enterprises of small and medium business. Innovation, digital technologies are implemented massively. Also, the issues of wages are covered within digital technologies, and it gives possibilities to give guarantee to cover social protection, to give social protection to people, and also to facilitate the way of doing business for small enterprises as well. So in countries, in BRICS countries, there's more access to finance services, and this is very important also for self-employed people and small and medium enterprises. Also, increasing efficiency of production is determined thanks to these innovative technologies applied by countries. There was a discussion during the working group, also the ministers did participate in it. Electronic formalities, so e-formality. This term was created ad hoc and included in wording of paragraph 8 of the Declaration of Ministers of the current year. So ministers did say that there's a big potential for solving issues of formalization of economy, thanks to the digitalization of economies and development of e-formality. Ministers of Labor and Employment also covered other issues as well. They exchange their experience and best practices regarding development of technologies and use of these technologies in order to formalize economies. For them, it is also important to solve the issue of continuing and expanding of scientific approach to these processes. So all these institutes of labor of the BRICS countries, it was proposed to these institutes to prepare a report on e-formality, on other practices of development which are applied in BRICS countries. Well, this report is important not only to summarize these possibilities and to give people who are taking solutions to take them into account. An important thing is this. This is the first step to the possibility to apply this possibility with the countries of South-South as well.
Может быть, и группы 20, куда входят все страны БРИКС. То есть это момент очень...
BRICS countries, in G20 countries. So development of such a report is important. So we need to formalize, to prepare such a report for not only for ministers, but also for those who take decisions on the political level. These are the steps which will give us the possibilities in the future to give orientation to future policies between countries and in SSTC formalization. With this, I have finished my presentation. Thank you so much.
Спасибо за интересный доклад. Я вспоминаю, что Guy Ryder, генеральный директор
Thank you very much for an interesting presentation. I remember that the International Labour Organization director made a speech when the declaration was adopted, and he said that it respects the ILO resolution and the global call for action, and is devoted to the human-centered restoration that should be inclusive and sustainable. All these components are present in this resolution, and colleagues know it very well. And I think it's better use this platform and to call all these countries and ILO constituents to use it.
Now we have some 15 minutes to open the discussions. Please raise your hands or otherwise provide any sign that you would like to speak or make a comment. You can use the chat, of course, as well. You can ask the questions to the speakers. I see that the number of participants have increased dramatically. So we are 55 now. Congratulations to all. Please, we are waiting to your questions, comments. Anita, I see your hand raised. Please.
Yes. I was waiting a little bit to see if there was people from the floor that would participate. So I have, first of all, I'd like to thank all of the presenters today because they were excellent presentations. And I had just a small question for Fernanda. So Fernanda, thanks as well for having woke up at 6 a.m. probably to be here at 7 a.m. with us. So my question for Fernanda was a little bit like, I think it was very interesting, the Brazil-Peru experience and labor inspection and how, you know, the whole South-South cooperation dynamics works. And it's something that Gotcha was actually concerned about. He said, I hope she's speaking about labor inspection, and you did speak a lot about that and the linkage with child labor. But I was wondering in terms of two questions, like for the formalization of the informal economy, how that would be linking. And the second one is some recommendations for this forum, which is a BRICS CIS dialogue forum. So that would be for Fernanda. And maybe Sabyasachi Saha as well. Thank you so much for your presentation. It was very interesting. I mean, all of them were fascinating, but also in the same vein, because you spoke a lot about BRICS and you know, South-South cooperation within BRICS and how that could be brought to other fora, because here is the dialogue fora with the CIS. So today we have a bit less of that part, but that would be interesting to hear. So from these two questions, but I have questions for all, but I don't want to monopolize the question and answer session. So over, maybe. Gotcha, maybe over to you to give the floor back to Fernando or Sabia or.
Okay. I was hoping that colleagues will volunteer. So Fernanda, maybe you start first.
Okay, thank you, Anita, for the question and for being so enthusiastic with the initiative. In terms of formalization, that was one of the questions. In terms of formalization, this experience between Brazil and Peru, this labor inspection methodology that was shared between Brazil and Peru could stimulate the formalization in Peru. They use it specifically to tackle formalization subject in their labor inspection actions. So they used these dissuasive letters to invite the enterprises and to call the enterprises and stimulate the formalization of workers. So when they send the letters to various small enterprises that they are working with, they could observe that after they were sending the letters, many enterprises were formalizing some of the workers that they were dealing with. So the date of the formalization was just after the date of when they received the letter through the labor inspection. So we could say that it is directly linked, the results of formalization and the application of this methodology. That's how we were linking this idea of this sharing of experiences between Brazil and Peru and the results of formalization. And a recommendation to this forum, I think that we could share as much as possible these experiences in a systematized way. We are going to work, we are systematizing this experience through a video, and I think this could be useful to translate it into many languages as possible and share it with the communities through the South-South ILO link or South Point. And this would be the recommendation. Let's systematize it in a very simple way so other countries could benefit from this experience and try to use it or link it with what they want. That's it.
Dear Fernanda, I think here's an additional question to you coming from a colleague, Elena Zottowa from Rostrud, Russian Federation. She is interested in to knowing more about how these inspectors were recruited to the work and what was their function. and whether they've been acting as a controlling body, formal controlling body.
In the case of Brazil, the labor inspector, they are recruited through a formal process of a context, in a national context, where they are hired after some written proofs and so on. So they are public servants linked to the Ministry of Labor, and they have the function of inspecting. But what is new in this methodology, that they have changed and they have adopted not only an inspector role, but also a preventive role. So they are trying to include in their inspector actions a view of prevention and training of the specific sector, training enterprises on the rules and regulations applied in Brazil, and trying to do much more preventive aspect of the labor inspection than the controlling one, or the application of files, or the traditional labor inspection action. And in the case of Peru, I'm not sure how the labor inspections are higher, but they adapt the methodology with the same idea of having a much more preventive aspect of the labor inspection, and also trying to train and disseminate the rules and regulations and everything about the sector that they are dealing with.
Thank you. Thank you very much for those comments. We still have some 5 minutes, I think, for the questions and comments. And maybe Mr. Shanghua would like to come forward. And
I have a question actually for Sabyasachi Saha.
Please.
I had already asked actually.
You did. Okay, sorry.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yeah, no problem.
Sorry.
Yeah.
It was the one, I will just recapitulate. It was about, because he spoke, Sabyasachi Saha spoke about a lot about BRICS. So I wonder like how this could also, some of the recommendations could go beyond, go to CIS and other groups. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Anita ji, for that question. And as we have been discussing on this issue for some time now, how BRICS can go beyond BRICS in some aspects to help the development initiatives in other developing countries. As I pointed out, there is enormous South-South cooperation agenda by individual BRICS countries that's also happening. But your question about the pertinent, what BRICS as a group can provide to some of the regional partners, in this case, the CIS countries. I'm sure, the experience of bilateral engagements, India has a robust partnership with all Central Asian countries, and we have been looking at some of the economic partnership projects. But once again, looking at this particular issue, when we are discussing the post-pandemic challenges on the labor market and the formalization, BRICS itself has a very diverse cooperation agenda, and the fact that labor issues and employment and issues are getting discussed very intensely in BRICS through a formalized structure at the level of ministers is highly encouraging, because then that generates a lot of attention and focus to some of the issues, because BRICS countries themselves are very large economies, and we have similar problems of informality, be it in India or South Africa or Brazil, including in China and to some extent in Russia as well. So we knew with the advent of technology, every worker might turn out to be an informal sector worker going forward. So we need specific protocols to deal with this emerging challenge that is there. So BRICS countries need to engage more amongst themselves, but also pass on the learning that they have generated in the process to other developing regions. And there, to begin with, I think that the existing mechanisms of BRICS network of level institutions, so they should they can come up with programs, specific programs in terms of more value-added training that can be extended to other developing countries, as well as I have said, that the knowledge capacities and the core research component that goes into formulating strategies, very informed, policy making, is about how the scenarios would look like for the future, and how we see informality itself changing, and what would be the new challenges other than issues around resource mobilization, issues around social security, and the specific challenges that are coming up. So the role and involvement of think tanks along with specialized institutions like the ILO coming up is very important. And as we would all agree that South-South by design and principle is a very demand-driven process. So definitely, to respect that demand-driven nature of South-South cooperation, there is a lot of scope to support and enable countries in their trajectories of creating more decent jobs in their economies, and also to build on the capacities on knowledge and policy in that direction is of importance. So I think there are the discussion on some of these issues have just begun, and I thank ILO for these initiatives on bringing the BRICS perspective on informality and its connect with CIS countries. There is a lot that individual BRICS countries need to do and can do for some of the partner countries in the region, as well as BRICS as a group, with extended financial capacities and resource mobilization, as well as the knowledge-driven approaches that could be important in the short to medium term.
Thank you very much. I think we are not left with much time to proceed with the further questions and comments. I think we need to now move to the final part of our webinar, and I would like to invite Mr. Duncan Chado, who is a development specialist with experience working with NGOs in different countries, for instance, in Kenya, in different UN agencies, in Nairobi, Rome, Geneva, in implementing projects which supported capacity building and governance. And he, at the moment, works as a consultant supporting South-South and triangular cooperation initiatives at the International Training Center, Turin. Mr. Chando, floor is yours, please.
Thank you so much. So actually, my role is now a little bit towards the end in terms of just looking at what we've been discussing for the last past weeks. So during this past week, we've had a number of group work, and during this group work, again, people are given an opportunity to share some of the action points that we can take forward, because we're going to complete this series of webinars. What can we take forward beyond this series? And a number of action points were put forward under the 6 recommendations that came from both the BRICS knowledge series and also the CIS webinar that took place. And all these, again, were also linked to 2 research papers. So I just want to go straight away to some of the action points that people pointed under recommendation 1. It was recommended that there's the aspect of building on the existing knowledge, academic capacity on BRICS and CIS institution, and encourage them to integrate the topic of informal economy. So some of the action points, both these are going for the UN system, for the BRIC CIS, as well as for social partners and CSOs, is number 1 is to mobilize resources from BRICS and CIS and other partners, because resources are very key in moving forward in the whole aspect of informal economy. The other aspect is set up a BRICS and CIS states interdisciplinary roundtable, because like we've understood that informality doesn't stand alone. So informality also revolves around other issues, and also right now we also have the whole issue of COVID-19 and social security. The other action point is strengthening partnership and policy coherence between knowledge development partners. So this one we want to there's the aspect of working with academia, think tanks, UN system, both from BRIC CIS and also other countries. And the other action point is working closely with the Global Labor University to conduct research, because research plays a very key role in the whole area of informality. Next. In continuation, it was also recommended in terms of an action that because knowledge is very key, and that's what we've been doing all along. So the support for massive open learning courses on formalization of the informal economy. Again, this will strengthen knowledge exchange between BRICS and CIS countries. The other one is working closely with the ministries of labor, both from CIS and BRICS, also to support the formulation of policies and encouraging incentive for formalization, because I think we also heard about this issue of formalization where some countries use either a carrot and stick, but I think the whole aspect of incentive is very important. And also integrating South-South triangular cooperation in the programs of different BRICS and CIS institutions. And also the last action point is the ILO should increase coherence between various online platforms. So dealing with BRICS and CIS with the view of harmonizing the use of digital technology. And I think in the era of COVID, I think more and more we have used digital platform to learn and also exchange knowledge. Next, please. So under recommendation 2, where the ILO should expand and intensify work with the BRICS and CIS countries and other emerging partners on raising awareness and applying provision for recommendation for the recommendation 2 of 4. So under these action point for the ILO, number 1 is to develop training programs together with ILO constituents from BRICS and CIS countries on transition from the informal to the formal economy. And the key issue also, we need to focus on labor inspection, social security, OSH, financing decent work, as well as environmental sustainability. So those are key things that are being recommended for ILO. The other recommendation is to design and adapt existing training courses, because already there are a number of existing courses. So either we can adapt them, but also we can also come up with the new ones and look at how to across different policy areas. So we're talking about social protection, employment promotion, and skills development. And the next action point for the ILO is also to develop monitoring framework with adjustable outputs and progress indicators to support the CIS and BRICS countries. This again will help in monitoring progress in facilitating transition to formality. This again, it should be in line with the recommendation 2 of 4, which include cost-benefit analysis tools. The other one is working together with creative economy and art sector to raise awareness, because they play a very key important role in awareness raising. The second last is designing the scope of research and surveys. And also the last one is ILO to reach out to movements in formal economy for SSTC cooperation, because more and more, I think throughout this series, the whole aspect of cooperation and the whole aspect of SSTC has been stressed over and over again. Next, please. In the third recommendation is whereby BRIC CIS country can help sharing data, those that are in the formal sector, but also remain formal. Remain informal. So data is very key in ensuring that there's knowledge exchange. So under this, the action point for BRIC CIS constituents and emerging partners, as well as ILO. So number 1 is the strengthening of cooperation between CIS and BRICS on social security system. So this will involve with the involvement of labor department and statistical department and link up social partners. Number 2 is the BRICS countries can strengthen cooperation in regards to labor inspection, share experience, and inclusive social dialogue. Number 3, we are looking at raising awareness among policymakers on methodologies used for measuring informality. I think this one came out very clear in the research that was done between the CIS country, that is Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan. So this was also one of the key points that came out. And also the last one is simplify the search methodology, methodological information on measuring informality and statistical informality, including putting together relevant sources and dedicating a web page for structuring content. Next, please. Next. Next, please. I think you're going backward. Next. Next. Okay. So under okay, thank you. No, is the next one, 4. Recommendation 4. Yes, thank you. So BRICS countries research data, knowledge networks on formalization of formal economy and strengthening social security system and digital platform So action point, this one again goes for both BRICS and CIS constituents, but as well as the ILO. So increasing cooperation among research centers, data hubs, institutions, BRIC CIS, and other countries. So also the other aspect of also collaboration and cooperation between different regions. So this is, we are talking about ASEAN, SADC, cooperation with BRICS and CIS engaging in the topic of formalization. The other thing is also to initiate and facilitate exchange of data, knowledge and experience of formalization and relevant data, relevant data collection methodologies. This again came out very, very key. The other action point is the ILO should work closely with ministries, stroke departments in charge of statistics in BRICS and CIS countries. This again will help in identifying areas where new research is needed, and with focus on informality, issues around women and the care economy. And the last action point here is the ILO should support the preparation of BRICS CIS research through labor institution and assignments on focal points within the relevant actors. So that again is a key recommendation for the ILO. Next, please. So the fifth recommendation here is encourage the network of BRICS Labor Institute to analyze the care economy in the context of informal economy and its role in formalization process. I think this is one of the recommendation whereby I think we found a lot of action point that participants really encourage in this angle. So one of them is a comprehensive analysis of the care economy of BRICS and CIS countries from a multidisciplinary angle, because like we've understood that care economy again, it doesn't stand alone. So there's other aspect that revolves around care economy from social security and other aspects. So it should be a multidisciplinary approach. The other action point is BRICS CIS should strengthen public-private partnership to enhance accessibility and number of care institutions. The other one is the ILO and BRICS should conduct fresh gender-sensitive research on care economy, and also order the monitor of close progress on transition to formality and facilitate the design strategies and adopt national context. The other recommendation, action point is also explore the involvement of NGOs, public health, social protection, and educational institutions. Like we said that the whole aspect of multidisciplinary angle should be adhered to. So the next one. In continuation, under recommendation 5, like I mentioned, that the number of action points really came out through for this particular recommendation is to form or update professional standard to involve more qualified specialists in care economy. Again, looking at the impact of COVID in the current situation, also explore and survey the link between informality, care, and labor migration in BRICS and CIS. Also, we need to assist SMEs in creating decent jobs in care economy through innovation, technology, solution, and migrant labor rights. The other one is also analyze the impact of increase in distance on care economy by categories. We're looking at the children, elderly, and disabled. Doing the whole categorization thing. And also the last one is the support of competitiveness of the internal labor market by taking appropriate measures to leverage the potential of capacity of youth, again, women, and other vulnerable groups. Next one. So for the last recommendation was that BRIC CIS government and social partners should commit and undertake review of what action each government could take to encourage the formalization of the informal economy rapidly. Again, we are looking this in the context of COVID-19 framework. So action point both for BRIC CIS constituents, emerging partners, as well as ILO, is to develop emergency response strategy to support the workers during disruptive moments, such as the pandemic. I think all of us we have witnessed like previous presentation have indicated that a number of people lost their jobs during COVID-19. So going forward also is to facilitate the easy access to formalization of the informal economy by easing bureaucratic barriers. And I think this also was very key in some of the research that indicated that some countries also had the whole aspect of making the formalization progress a bit bureaucratic. So that's another recommendation. The other one is to develop targeted national action plans and programs for support in supporting most vulnerable informal workers, including youth and also older people. And the other recommended action point is continue supporting a dialogue between tripartite partners in BRICS and CIS. I think these are has been going on throughout this webinar. And I think this we can also carry forward and make it a continuous, dialogue and conversation. And also institutionalize the BRIC CIS dialogue exchange. I think also is linked to the previous comment. And the last one is learn from the best practices on social partners and other countries. And I think in this connection, that brings to the end my presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. That was very impressive. You did it in a relatively short time, and I think we all now see what are the main recommendations coming from this extensive 1 month's work in the series of webinars. Of course, it would be good to have more time to discuss it, maybe to provide some comments and questions. But I'm afraid we are left with almost no time, and I would like to now ask Anita whether we can continue because of the interpretation and all this that is involved. Please, Anita, advice on that.
No, unfortunately, actually, our workshops are foreseen for 90 minutes, and we can extend to 2 hours, which is happening today, which shows that, we still have the same 55 participants, which shows the enthusiasm is there. And I'm very happy about that, but unfortunately we can't. I mean, if there was a burning question, you could either say it now, or that could be, I think there's one burning question from...
Ms. Razumova.
I'm sorry, Anita, could you please have a look in the chat? I ask you if I have opportunity to invite our colleagues to publish their articles. Could you please, if you permit me, I will do it. Thank you. Sorry.
Yes, I think there was maybe Karina. Can you mention the suggestion that you received as well? Be easier. Karina has a suggestion.
Уважаемые коллеги, здравствуйте. Мы получили прекрасное предложение от...
Good afternoon, dear colleagues. We received a proposal from Tajikistan, from our colleagues, that echoes the proposal from Rostrud colleagues that we heard in August and September. The proposal to organize a series of webinars to study the Brazilian experience on formalization of the informal economy. Maybe it's worth organizing a kind of knowledge experience exchange series dedicated to different BRICS countries. So each webinar will be dedicated to a separate country and will cover the aspects of politics and other issues of this country.
I think we are left with 2 minutes, and because Brazil was many times mentioned, and because of the labor inspection as well. So I would like to remind especially the colleagues from my sub-region to remember and to pay attention to the Committee of Experts, ILO Committee of Experts 2020 general observation on the implementation of the Convention 81 and 129, both on labor inspection. Please look at how critical the expert committee is about it. Just to mention maybe a few words from there. So the general observation says that the committee expresses concern that a number of member states that have ratified one or both labor inspection conventions have carried out reforms that substantially undermine the inherent functioning of labor inspection system, contrary to the provisions of those conventions. And the committee observed that this trend has been most notable in Eastern Europe and Central Asia, but there are examples in other regions as well. And among the most vivid violations, it mentions the moratorium on labor inspections, which the committee has repeatedly emphasized constitutes a serious violation of Convention 81/129, requiring a law prior notification to employers of an inspection visit or significant restrictions on the undertaking of unannounced inspections, again, contrary to Article 12 and 16 of Conventions 81/129, respectively. establishing a requirement to obtain consent for inspection from other government agencies that again contrary to Convention 81, 129, etc., etc. There is a 7 or 8 point list of very serious violations that are going on and on in our sub-region. And please, before we think about learning from Brazil, a labor inspection system, please let's look at our deficiencies, our shortcomings that exist in our region, and very much damages our efforts, the trade unions, the social partners' efforts to formalize informal economy. With this, I think, Anita, we are safe to conclude. Please, I would like to thank the colleagues, the participants, for their active participation, their interest, as you said. So we still have 54 participants, and the interest keeps up this whole 2 hours. Thank you again very much, and all the best to all, and wish you all the success. Back to you, Anita, please.
Thank you so much, Gotcha. No, just I'd like to thank very warmly the offer to work together with Brazil, because I mean, that's the whole point of this kind of workshop. I agree with you. Of course, we have to look at our own records, but at the same time, the sharing of good practices and interregional cooperation is one of the things that my department and my unit is in charge of. So we're very much accepting this invitation, but of course we have to discuss this with ILO Moscow. I see Ramiro Pizarro is here, Gotcha is here, and other colleagues in the sub-region. But for sure, this would be an interesting thing. Of course, we have to also discuss with ILO Brasilia, and then Fernanda would have to discuss with her director. So I'm just spotting you, Fernanda, so people see you. But I think the idea of having this this sharing is very good, and that's why we had you know, we had Sabia Sachi Singh, we had Elena Zottowa, we had Chuan Hua, so that we have this interregional cooperation. It's very much appreciated to have this kind of cooperation. I hope that we'll continue cooperating with the institutions which are here present, including RIS and ACFTU, but also working closely with Elena Zottowa as an expert on these topics. Actually, we picked her brain 3 times in a row or more because she was also in the BRICS knowledge series, she's in the BRIC CIS series, and within this series she spoke twice. So I know we are abusing you a little bit, sorry about that, but very interesting perspectives from the region. What I wanted to just say before we close is that the recommendations that were read out by Duncan were not prepared by us, they were prepared by you. We just packaged them and eliminated duplications. So that means that it was your own recommendations. We think they're very solid and a very good result of joint work. And unless we see hands up, we will consider that means they are adopted, because this is like the 3rd time around that we're talking about them. They'll be reflected on the closing. There, as you notice, there's an expert from the ILO that will reflect a bit on your recommendations. And I think that's the important thing, to bring the recommendations from the social partners, from the partners, from the constituents, the governments, the think tanks, the universities, everybody who is here, but then bring it also to ILO experts that can maybe try to, you know, picking their brains a bit, you know, and trying to make this a reality, because that's what we want, you know, to transform this to reality. So thanks so much, Duncan, for having speeded through the recommendations. It's true, I was going backwards. I want to go back to the beginning. This knowledge series is so great that we don't want to end it ever. But we are going to now have our closing session on Thursday, so not on Tuesday. The last session would be Thursday. I think Ariana will send you the necessary reminders, and the videos are posted on South Meeting Point. So I encourage you to copy all these links because, you know, once the Zoom session is closed, it disappears. But I have also posted this in the e-forum, and I have posted it in numerous mails. So I think by now you probably have these links. If you don't, just give a shout. And I think, Gotcha, thanks for your fantastic moderation. I think by now we can consider this session of today closed. So thank you very much for everybody, and for those who wake up very early, and for those of you who are up very late. So we're looking at especially the 2 corners here, China and Brazil, but I think India as well, so, and Russia. So thanks so much.
and those who didn't afford to have lunch.
Yeah,
Okay.
the interpreters, of course. We always have to thank the interpreters who are having a hard time with us, and also, of course, Ariana and all the organizers. So thanks so much.
Thank you.
Anita. Thank you very much, colleagues. Bye bye.
Thank you. Okay, ciao. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank
Ciao.
you.
Bye. Ciao. Ciao, ciao.
Bye.
Ciao.
Bye-bye, see you all.